Right. Good evening, good morning, good whatever time it happens to be where you are. My name is Dr. William Painter with Journey Road Ministries, and this is the third Sunday after Epiphany. And so we got Christmas behind us, we got New Year's behind us, and we got Mardi Gras in front of us, Fat Tuesday, say goodbye to meat, and Lent, the Lenten season. But this is the kind of in-between time, I don't know about you, but this is the time when I'm tired of the Christmas thing, although I really enjoyed it, but I am a little worn out from all the joyousness of Christmas. So I've chosen a song tonight that's probably a downer song. It's an old Woody Guthrie tune, and Woody Guthrie didn't mince words with his opinions about social justice and injustice and so on. He even wrote a song about old man Trump. And this is a song that I've played this in church before. I think it's important because it's written about the Great Depression. And about the Great Migration from the Dust Bowl to California. And I'm one generation removed from that. My father was a child during the Great Depression and suffered. He said there were always too many of us, and we never had enough food to eat. And my grandmother fed them sugar. They could get sugar from the gummit. And that would keep the kids quiet, and of course it caused their teeth to rot out. My dad always had a sweet tooth, so I'm going to do this song, and then we'll come back around for some more meaningful stuff. This is called "I Ain't Got No Home," and it's performed by Bruce Springsteen, and I'm a big fan of the boss, so I'm going to do his version, but please remember that it was Woody Guthrie that brought it to us to begin with. I ain't got no home, I'm just a rambling around. I work when I can get it, I roam from town to town. The police make it hard, boys, wherever I may go. And I ain't got no home in this world anymore. I was farming shares and always I was down. My debts, they were so many, man, they wouldn't go around. The drought had my crop, Mr. Banker got my loan, and I ain't got no home in this world anymore. 6 children I have raised, they're scattered and they're gone. And my darling wife to heaven, she has flown. She died of a fever, yeah, on the cabin floor. I ain't got no home in this world anymore. I'm minding your minds and I got it in your corn. I've been working, mister, since the day that I was born. I worry all the time like I never did before, 'cause I ain't got no home in this world anymore. Well, now I just ramble around to see what I can see. This wide, wicked world, sure a funny place to be. The gambling man is the rich and the working man is poor. And I ain't got no home in this world anymore. Well, I'm stranded on this road that goes from sea to sea. 100,000 others are stranded here with me. 100,000 others, yes, 100,000 more. And I ain't got no home in this world anymore. Okay. That's the song. I'll catch you on the flip
Okay,
side.
put the guitar up. I'm back. Hope you didn't find that too depressing. Consider it a calming balance to all the joy we've had over Christmas. So here we are, back at the third Sunday after Epiphany, and our gospel reading comes from Matthew chapter 4, verses 12 through 23. This is where Jesus begins gathering up people for his ministry. Now when Jesus heard that John had been arrested, he withdrew to Galilee. He left Nazareth and made his home in Capernaum by the sea, in the territory of Zebulun and Naphtali, so that what had been spoken during the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled, the land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, on the road by the sea, across the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and for those who sat in the region and shadow of death, light has dawned. From that time, Jesus began to proclaim, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near." As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And as he went from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and curing every disease and every sickness among the people. Thus endeth the gospel. Now, this is the beginning. Jesus starts gathering his apostles, and we don't know why he chose who he chose, and none of them really ended up, dying of old age. I think maybe one of them did. I'd have to, look that up. But most of them ended up in a very, very bad way. But they were faithful, and they believed in what they were doing. Jesus ended up in a bad way, and his apostles were no different. And when I read this, I'm reminded of an old Renaissance piece from the humanist Francesco Petrarca. And it's a very famous letter that he writes, and it is entitled "The Ascent of Mount Ventoux." There is a mountain called Mount Ventoux, and you can look this up and get the full text. And he had been, what he said is he wanted to make this ascent, and he'd been promising himself that he would do so because he understood he could see France and Italy from this mountain. So he was going to go. But he didn't want to go by himself. He was looking for a companion. And this is what he said. "When I came to look about for a companion, I found, strangely enough, that hardly any one among my friends seemed suitable. So rarely do we meet with just the right combination of personal tastes and characteristics, even among those who are dearest to us. This one was too apathetic, and that one over-anxious. This one too slow, and that one too hasty. One was too sad, another over-cheerful, one more simple, another more sagacious than I desired. I feared this one's taciturnity and that one's loquacity. The heavy deliberation of some repelled me as much as the lean incapacity of others. I rejected those who were likely to irritate me by a cold want of interest, as well as those who might weary me by their excessive enthusiasm. Such defects, however grave, could be borne with at home, for charity suffereth all things, and friendship accepts many burdens. But it is quite otherwise on a journey, where every weakness becomes more serious. So as I was bent upon pleasure, and anxious that my enjoyment should be unalloyed, I looked about me with unusual care, balanced against one another the various characteristics of my friends, and without committing any breach of friendship, I silently condemned every trait which might prove disagreeable on the way. And, would you believe it, I finally turned homeward for aid, and proposed the ascent to my only brother, who is younger than I, and with whom you are well acquainted. He was delighted and gratified beyond measure by the thought of holding the place of a friend as well as a brother. And Okay, so you just have to sort of maybe tolerate me on this. I love Petrarch. I think he's one of the most sensitive intellectuals. He, of course, created the Petrarchian sonnet, and he used to sit in his house and have dinner party with the ancients, with Cicero and Sallust and the great Roman classicists, and converse with them, in his mind, and or maybe they spoke aloud. I don't know. But the ascent of Mount Ventoux is about a journey. It's about a real journey, and there's been some question. Well, did he really go up the Mount Ventoux? And I don't really care. What is important is that, first of all, his brother is a Carthusian monk. He's in orders, and Carthusianism was a very ascetic, difficult, monastic regimen to follow. So his brother was a tough one, and and Petrarch, he was in the court and he was a writer, and he wasn't. I wouldn't call him tough at all. In fact, not tough. And in fact, you get a sense of his fussiness, right, when you hear him. Oh, not this one and not that one, and that one's too enthusiastic, and that one's too boring, and so on. And I just very human, because when you go on a trip, when you go on a journey with people, it's not the same as sitting in your living room and having a nice glass of wine, because at the end of the day they go home, but you're on a journey and it could last for days. And it can be difficult, and you have to rely on each other. And sometimes even the smallest characteristic or trait, as Petrarch said, can just become annoying, just blown out of proportion. I mean, even if they maybe snort at night, and you're your third night out and you haven't gotten much sleep, and you maybe I'll just take this rock and kill them. I mean, I'm being obviously facetious, but going on a journey with someone requires a careful selection. And the funny thing about this passage is, he said, "Oh, it's about pleasure, so I don't want to be inconvenienced." The poor guy. I won't give away the story. If you want to read this and have surprises, then skip over this next part, because I'm going to what they call spoilers. I'm going to give you a spoiler. Because what he does, his brother goes straight up the mountain, straight up the path. And Petrarch decides, well, that's just hard. I don't want to do that. So he thought he'd find a shortcut, and he ended up getting lost and getting in the brambles and the bushes, and he had to ask directions. and of course, all this is a metaphor for life. His brother, the Carthusian monk, goes straight to the top of the mountain. And by the time Petrarch gets there, his brother's been reading the Bible, been reading Scripture, and he's rested and refreshed, and Petrarch's all cut up and tired. So, it wasn't pleasurable for him, in spite of his early emphasis on pleasure. And what he does is he gets up on the mountain and he opens up his book to read a book, and it's Augustine's Confessions. Of all the books that were available, he chooses Augustine's Confessions. And I'm not going to tell you, he says, the book just opened to a page, and he read this page. I'm not going to tell you what page it is. You have to read the story in order to get that. That's too a spoiler too far, so to speak. But when I read this passage about that Matthew tells us, about Jesus selecting these followers, these apostles, they are on a long journey, as if on a winter's day, a winter's night, and they don't know how far they can go or how much time is set for them. I'm paraphrasing the Petrarchian essay, because Petrarch knew all these stories, and he wove the concepts into his own writing, and so you just imagine, Jesus had to go through some deliberative process of some kind in order to say, these two guys, not those two guys, and not those two guys, not that one at all, these two guys. Because he didn't just let anybody be a follower. There's other passages where people say, I want to follow you. And he goes, no, go home and tend your business, because he knew that some people weren't capable of seeing it through. And for us, in this third Sunday after Epiphany, as we look to the season of Lent and the journey of this year, we are on a journey that is a difficult journey. I mean, I've said this before. Think about this last 2 years even. I mean, there's January. And I think about last January, I could never have conceived what this year would be like for me and my family. I could never have conceived what it was going to be like. Not in a heartbeat. And so we're on this journey, but we're not really sure where it's going to lead us. And I think that we have to be really careful about who we choose as our partners to journey along this road with. I don't mean just marital partners. I mean who we spend our time with, who we share our thoughts and desires and hopes and fears. Many people have lost people this year. One of my dear friends passed away, young man, and I loved him, and I loved his wife, and still love his wife, and I love their little girl, who has grown up with well, he's not a little boy anymore. He's a dirty teenager. That's what happens to all of them. But they went to preschool together, and I'm really significantly fond of the widow of my friend and his daughter, and I share with them, and I think, I don't know if I'd want to be on a journey without them. I mean, it doesn't mean that they live here or I have to spend every day with them. I don't actually, but I do communicate with them. We have a shared journey, and I think about other people in my life, like Mary and Cheryl, other Journey Road ministers. They're special people, and I like sharing with them because they help me get through on my journey. And we look at the Woody Guthrie song, I Ain't Got No Home Anymore. Honestly, none of us do. We don't have a home. I mean, we may appear to have a home, but, he did, and he lost it through no fault of his own. And he's in a world that doesn't make any sense to him. And he's just rambling around. He doesn't know where his kids are. His wife's passed away. And he's in a world that's a funny place because the gambling man gets rich and the working man gets poor. An upside down world. And we are living that journey right now in this upside down world. And there's a war where women and children are being massacred over in the Ukraine. There are crazy right-wing extremists in charge of a whole part of Congress. And we scratch our heads and we worry and we wonder and we think, I was talking to a friend of mine in Bangkok, an old friend of mine, known him for decades now, and he would say, the world's going to, it's just just going to be a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. It's, and of course, it's not uncommon for old people, he's older than me, to say, the kids are bad and the world's bad. When I remember when I was young, it was the best time, Now it's all just crap. And he was doing that. He was singing that song. And all I could think of was our journey is what we make it. And it's no better or worse than it was. And before, and it's look at Jesus on this. I mean, he's living in occupied territory, occupied by the Romans. And unlike Isaiah, who said, follow the rules or face punishment, Jesus' message was the kingdom is near, and repent because the kingdom is near. And I think we keep that message, that idea that the pinnacle of Mount Ventoux is near, that the journey where we're going is near, and that we choose people carefully to whom we can provide help and support, and from whom we receive help and support. Anyway, that's my 14 minutes and 57 seconds. And I hope you find some blessed time to reflect on this year and on Lent. And I will see you in 1, 2, 3 weeks. Cheers.